Olivia Norwood stood on the dusty platform in Evanston, Wyoming, gripping her worn leather traveling case as the train pulled away behind her, leaving a cloud of black smoke that matched the uncertainty billowing through her mind. The year was 1878, and she had traveled over 1,000 miles from Philadelphia to marry a man whose only communication had been 3 carefully worded letters that revealed almost nothing about his character, but everything about his desperation for companionship. At 23 years old, she had exhausted every respectable option for survival back east after her father's death left her penniless, and her stepmother made it abundantly clear there was no room for her in the household. Becoming a mail-order bride had seemed like her only choice, but standing here now, surrounded by the raw wilderness of Wyoming territory, she questioned whether she had made a terrible mistake. The advertisement had been simple. Rancher seeking wife must be of good moral character, willing to work hard, no beauty required. That last phrase had stung more than she cared to admit, confirming what she had always suspected about her own plain appearance. A tall figure separated from the group of men loitering outside the general store, and Olivia's breath caught in her throat. He moved with a purposeful stride that ate up the distance between them, his broad shoulders outlined against the afternoon sun. As he drew closer, she could make out strong features beneath the brim of his dusty hat, a square jaw that looked like it had been carved from the same granite as the surrounding mountains, and eyes the color of summer grass that studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Miss Norwood." His voice was deeper than she expected, rough around the edges but not unkind. "Yes, I am she." Olivia straightened her spine, determined not to show the fear coursing through her veins. "You must be Mr. Brennan." "Kyle Brennan, yes, madam." He reached for her case, and she noticed his hands were large and calloused, the hands of a man who knew hard work. "Welcome to Evanston. I hope the journey wasn't too difficult." "It was long," she admitted, allowing him to take her bag. Up close, she could see he was younger than she had imagined, perhaps only 28 or 29, with sun-weathered skin and the lean build of someone who spent every daylight hour working outdoors. "Your letters didn't mention how remote the location would be." Something flickered in his eyes, gone too quickly for her to identify. "The ranch is about an hour's ride from here. I brought the wagon to make it more comfortable for you." He gestured toward a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses. "We should get going before the sun gets too low. These mountain roads can be tricky in the dark." The ride was quiet at first, filled only with the creak of wagon wheels and the steady clip of hooves on packed earth. Olivia stole glances at the man beside her, trying to reconcile the reality with the image she had built in her mind. He was handsome in a rugged way that photographs could never capture, but there was a guardedness about him that put her on edge. "You didn't bring much," Kyle observed, breaking the silence. "I don't have much to bring." The admission burned with shame, but there was no point in pretending. "My father was a clerk who invested poorly. When he died, there were debts instead of inheritances. I'm sorry for your loss." He said it simply, without the platitudes that had exhausted her back in Philadelphia. "Lost my own father 5 years back. Left me the ranch and enough debt to nearly sink it. I've been working to build it back up since." "Is that why you advertised for a wife? You need help with the work." She tried to keep the bitterness from her voice, but some of it leaked through anyway. Kyle was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he seemed to choose his words carefully. "That's part of it. Won't lie to you, Miss Norwood. Ranch life is hard and having a partner makes it easier, but that's not the whole reason. What's the rest? Gets lonely out here. Man can lose himself in the silence if he's not careful." He turned to look at her then, and the honesty in his gaze caught her off guard. I figured it was time to build something that mattered, something beyond cattle and fence posts. Thought maybe a wife and eventually children would give life a different kind of purpose. The vulnerability in his admission softened something in Olivia's chest. That's more honest than I expected. I won't lie to you, he said firmly. That's a promise I'm making right now. You deserve the truth, even when it's not pretty. They crested a hill, and the ranch spread out before them in the valley below. It was more substantial than she had dared hope, with a solid 2-story house, a large barn, and several outbuildings all connected by well-maintained fences. Cattle dotted the grassland beyond, and in the distance, mountains rose like ancient sentinels keeping watch. It's beautiful, Olivia whispered, surprised by the emotion welling up inside her. It can be harsh too, Kyle warned. Winters are brutal, summers can be unforgiving. This land takes as much as it gives. Everything worth having requires sacrifice. She had learned that lesson too well over the past year. Kyle pulled the wagon up to the house, and before Olivia could climb down, he was there, offering his hand. His palm was warm and steady against hers, and for the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Inside, the house was sparsely furnished but clean, with solid wood furniture and windows that let in generous amounts of light. Kyle showed her around with the awkwardness of a man unaccustomed to hosting, pointing out the kitchen, the sitting room, and upstairs, 2 separate bedrooms. I prepared this one for you, he said, opening the door to a room with a bed covered in a colorful quilt, a dresser, and a small writing desk near the window. Figured you might want your own space, at least until we got to know each other better. Olivia turned to him in surprise. You don't expect to share a room immediately? Color rose in Kyle's cheeks, visible even beneath his tan. Miss Norwood, I may need a wife, but I'm not a brute. We barely know each other. Thought we might take some time before making things official if that suits you. Relief and something else, something more complicated, flooded through her. That's very considerate, Mr. Brennan. Kyle, he corrected gently. If we're going to try and build a life together, might as well use given names. Then you should call me Olivia. Olivia. He said it slowly, as if testing the weight of it on his tongue. Pretty name. It's the only pretty thing about me, she said before she could stop herself, then immediately regretted the self-deprecating comment. Kyle's expression shifted into something fierce. That's not true. You don't have to flatter me. I know what I look like. Your advertisement said no beauty required, which I assume means you weren't expecting much. She tried to keep her voice light, but the old wounds ran too deep. That's not what I meant at all. Kyle took a step closer, his green eyes intense. I wrote that because I didn't want some vain woman who'd wilt at the first sign of hard work. I've seen plenty of pretty faces that hid shallow hearts. I was looking for substance, not decoration. Well, you certainly got what you asked for then. Olivia turned away, focusing on the view from her window to hide the tears threatening to form. She heard him sigh behind her. Someone hurt you badly, didn't they? Made you believe you weren't worth much. Several someones, she admitted quietly. My stepmother used to say I had my father's unfortunate features. The girls at church called me plain. There was a man once who courted me, or so I thought, until I overheard him laughing with his friends about the desperate spinster who thought she had a chance. They were fools. The certainty in Kyle's voice made her turn around. He stood there, hat in his hands, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. You've got kind eyes, Olivia. Intelligent, too. And your mouth, when you're not frowning, has a nice shape to it. But more than that, you traveled halfway across the country to build a new life with a stranger. That takes courage most people don't have. That's worth more than a pretty face any day. Olivia didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with such straightforward appreciation for qualities she had never considered valuable. "Thank you," she finally managed. "That's kind of you to say." "Not kind. Honest. Remember what I promised." He moved toward the door. "I'll let you rest and freshen up. There's water in the pitcher and I'll heat some for a bath if you'd like. Supper will be ready in about an hour. Nothing fancy, I'm afraid. My cooking skills are basic." "I can cook," Olivia offered. It was one of the few things my stepmother insisted I learn well. "Not tonight. You've been traveling for days. Tomorrow we can figure out how to divide up the work, but tonight you rest." He paused at the door. "I'm glad you're here, Olivia. I know this isn't what you probably dreamed of for your life, but I'll do my best to make sure you don't regret coming." After he left, Olivia sat on the bed, running her hands over the carefully stitched quilt. The pattern was a wedding ring design, the kind that took months to complete. Had Kyle made this himself, or had his mother perhaps? She realized how little she knew about him, about his life, about what had really driven him to seek a mail-order bride. True to his word, Kyle brought up hot water for a bath and left it outside her door with the same awkward courtesy he had shown since her arrival. Olivia sank into the warm water, washing away the grime of travel and trying to process the surreal turn her life had taken. This morning she had been on a train, uncertain and afraid. Tonight she was in a ranch house in Wyoming with a husband who wasn't quite a husband yet, who said strange, kind things about her courage and her eyes. Supper was indeed simple, just beef and potatoes with biscuits that were a bit too hard, but Olivia was hungry enough not to care. They ate at a small table in the kitchen, the silence between them more comfortable than she expected. "Tell me about the ranch," Olivia said, wanting to break the quiet with something productive. "How much land do you have?" "About 300 acres, Kyle replied, seeming relieved to have a concrete topic. "Most of it is grazing land for the cattle. I've got about 200 head right now, hoping to expand to 300 by next year if the market holds. Also have some chickens, a few pigs, and 2 horses besides the wagon team. That's a substantial operation for one man. I've got a hand who comes in during the busy seasons, name's Tom Walsh. Good man, knows his way around cattle, but most of the daily work falls to me." He looked at her across the table. "I won't pretend I don't hope you'll help with some of it, but I won't force you into anything you're not willing to do." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Olivia assured him. "I may not know ranching, but I can learn." "I'm sure you can." He smiled, and it transformed his face, softening the hard edges and revealing laugh lines around his eyes. "You've got the look of someone who doesn't give up easy." Over the next few weeks, Olivia settled into a routine that was foreign and yet oddly satisfying. She woke before dawn to prepare breakfast, learning Kyle's preferences and adjusting her recipes accordingly. He liked his coffee strong and his eggs over easy, preferred bacon to sausage, and had a surprising fondness for any kind of pie. After breakfast, Kyle would head out to tend the cattle while Olivia tackled the endless domestic tasks that came with maintaining a ranch house. But she didn't stay confined to the house. True to his word, Kyle taught her about the ranch, showing her how to tend the chickens, explaining the rhythms of cattle ranching, even letting her try her hand at riding. Olivia proved to be a quick study, though she lacked natural grace and fell off more than once during those first riding lessons. "You're doing fine," Kyle assured her after she picked herself up from her third fall, dusty and frustrated. "Took me weeks to stay on a horse when I was a boy." "I'm not a boy, though. I'm a grown woman who should have better balance." She brushed off her skirts, wincing at the new bruises she would discover later. "Here." Kyle dismounted and came to stand beside her. "The problem isn't your balance. You're too tense. You're fighting the horse instead of moving with it. He placed his hands on her waist, and Olivia's breath caught. May I? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Kyle lifted her easily back into the saddle, his strong hands steadying her. Then he mounted behind her, his chest against her back, his arms coming around to cover her hands on the reins. Feel how I'm sitting. His breath was warm against her ear. Relaxed but aware. The horse can sense your mood. If you're nervous, she gets nervous. If you're calm, she settles. Olivia tried to focus on his words rather than the feeling of being surrounded by him, the solid strength of his body and the way his heartbeat seemed to sync with hers. I'll try. Good. Now let's just walk for a bit. Don't think about what might go wrong. Just feel the motion. He clicked his tongue softly and the horse began to walk. Kyle's hands were still over hers, guiding but not controlling. There you go. See? You're a natural. They rode like that for nearly an hour, circling the pasture while Kyle pointed out various features of the ranch and told her stories about growing up here with his parents and younger sister. Where's your sister now? Olivia asked, grateful for the distraction from her awareness of his proximity. Married a shopkeeper in Cheyenne. They've got 3 kids now, happy as can be. She visits when she can, but it's a long trip with little ones. There was affection in his voice, tinged with loneliness. I miss her. This place feels too empty sometimes. I never had siblings, Olivia admitted. I used to wish for them, especially after my mother died, someone to share the burden of my stepmother's disapproval. Kyle's arms tightened around her slightly. You've had a hard road, haven't you? No harder than many others. At least I survived. Surviving and living aren't the same thing, though. He brought the horse to a stop and dismounted, then helped her down. His hands lingered at her waist for a moment longer than necessary. I want you to do more than just survive here, Olivia. I want you to find something worth living for. And what do you live for, Kyle? She looked up at him, this man who had shown her more kindness in a few weeks than she had known in years. I'm still figuring that out, he admitted, but I think it might have something to do with you. The honesty of it stole her breath. Before she could respond, he stepped back, breaking the moment. We should head back. Got some fence posts that need mending before dark. As autumn deepened into winter, Olivia found herself thinking more and more about Kyle's words. He continued to treat her with unfailing courtesy and respect, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, but there were moments when she caught him watching her with an expression that made her heart race. When their hands brushed while washing dishes. When he helped her down from the wagon after their weekly trip to town for supplies. When he found her reading by the fire one evening and simply sat nearby, content to share the quiet companionship. The people of Evanston had accepted her with varying degrees of warmth. The shopkeeper's wife, a kindly woman named Martha, had taken Olivia under her wing, inviting her to the weekly ladies' sewing circle. It was there that Olivia learned the truth about Kyle's advertisement. He could have had his pick of women, Martha said one afternoon while they worked on a quilt for the church fundraiser. Half the single ladies in town have been setting their caps at him for years. Kyle Brennan is considered quite a catch around these parts. Olivia's needle paused mid-stitch. Then why did he advertise for a mail-order bride? Martha exchanged glances with the other women before answering carefully. There was a woman, few years back, Elizabeth Chambers, beautiful as a sunrise and twice as bright, or so everyone thought. Kyle courted her proper, even bought a ring. But it turned out she was more interested in his ranch than in him. She broke the engagement when a richer opportunity came along, some mining executive from Denver. Broke Kyle's heart pretty thoroughly. I didn't know. Olivia felt a rush of sympathy for the man who had been so careful with her own bruised feelings. He wanted someone who would choose him for the right reasons. Another woman, Sarah, added. Someone who would value the life he could offer, not just the material aspects of it. That's why his advertisement was so plain, almost off-putting. He was testing, in a way, for sincerity. The revelation shifted something in Olivia's understanding. Kyle hadn't advertised for a mail-order bride because no one wanted him. He had done it to protect himself, to find someone who wouldn't crush whatever remained of his ability to trust. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Olivia studied Kyle with new eyes. He looked tired, she noticed, the kind of deep weariness that came from carrying too much alone for too long. "Martha told me about Elizabeth Chambers today," she said quietly. Kyle's fork clattered against his plate. "Did she now? I'm sorry someone hurt you like that. I understand better now why you wrote your advertisement the way you did. It doesn't matter anymore." But the tension in his shoulders suggested otherwise. "It matters because it's part of who you are." Olivia reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact, and she felt him still beneath her touch. "I need you to know something, Kyle. I didn't come here expecting anything beyond survival. You've given me so much more than that. You've given me respect, kindness, and patience I never thought I'd find. Whatever Elizabeth couldn't see in you, well, that's her loss and my gain." Kyle turned his hand over, his fingers intertwining with hers. "You really mean that?" "I do." And as she said it, Olivia realized it was completely true. Somewhere in the daily rhythms of ranch life, in the quiet conversations and shared work, she had stopped simply surviving and started to care deeply for this gentle, guarded man. "I need to tell you something too." Kyle's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "When you stepped off that train, looking so scared and trying so hard to be brave, something in my chest just cracked wide open. Every day since, you've amazed me. The way you tackle new things without complaint, how you've made this house feel like a home, the sound of your laugh when I manage to say something funny. I'm falling for you, Olivia. Maybe already fallen. I know we said we'd take our time, and I'll stick to that if you need it, but I had to tell you the truth." Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but they were the good kind, the kind she had forgotten existed. "I'm falling too. It terrifies me because I never thought anyone would want me this way, but I'm falling so hard for you, Kyle Brennan." He stood, pulling her gently to her feet and into his arms. The embrace was warm and strong, and Olivia felt safer than she had in her entire life. When Kyle tilted her chin up, his eyes asking a silent question, she answered by rising on her toes to meet his kiss. It was tender and searching, a first kiss that felt like a promise of many more to come. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I think," Kyle said, his voice rough with emotion, "we should make this marriage official, properly official, if you're willing." "I'm willing." Olivia smiled up at him. "More than willing." That night, Olivia moved her belongings into Kyle's room, and they began their life together as husband and wife in truth. Kyle was gentle and patient, treating her like something precious, and Olivia finally understood what it meant to be cherished. The winter that followed was indeed harsh, as Kyle had warned. Snow piled high against the house, and there were days when going outside meant risking frostbite. But inside, Olivia and Kyle built their own warmth, learning each other's bodies and hearts with equal dedication. Kyle taught her to play chess on long evenings, and she taught him the joy of reading aloud, sharing adventure stories by the fire. They talked about everything and nothing, making up for lost time and building the foundation of a partnership that went deeper than either had expected. "I want to tell you something," Olivia said one night as they lay tangled together in the darkness. "Before I came here, I thought my life was essentially over. I was 23 with no prospects, no family who wanted me, no future worth imagining. I answered your advertisement because it was the only option that didn't involve complete destitution. I never expected to find love. Kyle's arms tightened around her. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else or with anyone else. You've shown me what it means to be valued for who I am, not despite my flaws but including them. You've never once made me feel like I'm not enough. That's because you're more than enough. He kissed her forehead. You're everything I didn't know I needed. Every morning I wake up grateful you stepped off that train. Even when I burn the biscuits, especially then. She could hear the smile in his voice. Keeps me humble. Spring came with a rush of melt water and new life. The cattle had survived the winter well, and Kyle's careful management meant there were several new calves to add to the herd. Tom Walsh returned from his winter break to help with the busy season, and Olivia found herself taking on more of the ranch work alongside the domestic duties. You're a natural with the animals, Tom observed one afternoon as Olivia helped move some of the cattle to new grazing. Kyle picked himself a good partner. Thank you, Tom. That means a lot coming from someone who knows this life so well. Tom, a grizzled man in his 50s with more experience than education, nodded approvingly. He's different since you came. Happier. Man needs more than cows and land to make a life worth living. Olivia had noticed the change in Kyle too. He smiled more readily, laughed more often, and the guardedness that had marked their first meetings had melted away entirely. He was demonstrative with his affection, never passing her without a touch or a kiss, and his eyes followed her with open adoration that still made her blush. One evening in late spring, Olivia realized her monthly courses were late. At first, she dismissed it as a natural irregularity, but as 1 week became 2 and then 3, she began to suspect the truth. The nausea that hit her one morning confirmed it. She waited until supper to tell Kyle, nervous despite knowing he would be happy. I have news, she said, watching him over her coffee cup. Good news, I hope. He looked up from his stew. I believe so. I think I might be expecting a baby. Kyle's spoon dropped, splashing gravy across the table. You're pregnant. We're going to have a child, I think so. It's still early, but all the signs are there. In 2 strides, Kyle was around the table, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around. We're going to be parents. Olivia, this is the best news you could have given me. You're happy then, she laughed, holding on to him. Happy, I'm overjoyed. He set her down carefully as if she might break. Are you feeling all right? Do you need anything? Should you be resting more? Kyle, women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I'm perfectly capable of continuing my normal activities for a while longer. But his concern warmed her heart. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer months. Kyle became even more attentive, if that was possible, insisting she rest more and taking over tasks he deemed too strenuous. Olivia tolerated his hovering because it came from a place of love, even when it bordered on excessive. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, she reminded him when he tried to prevent her from lifting a basket of laundry. I know, but you're carrying something precious, and I won't take any chances. His hand rested on her growing belly, his expression tender. This baby is proof that good things can come from taking risks. You took a chance on me, and now we're building a family. Their daughter was born in February 1879, during a snowstorm that rivaled the worst of the previous winter. The midwife from town, Mrs. Patterson, barely made it through the drifts in time. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Olivia thought she might not survive it, but Kyle never left her side, holding her hand and whispering encouragement until finally, their baby emerged with a lusty cry that filled the room. You have a healthy girl, Mrs. Patterson announced, placing the cleaned and wrapped infant in Olivia's arms. Olivia looked down at the tiny face, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it took her breath away. She's perfect. Kyle, who had held up remarkably well during the labor, promptly burst into tears at the sight of his daughter. She's beautiful, just like her mother. I'm not beautiful, Olivia protested automatically, though the words lacked their usual conviction. You're wrong. Kyle leaned down to kiss her forehead, his tears falling on both of them. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, especially right now. You just brought our daughter into the world. You're magnificent. They named her Grace, because that's what she represented to both of them. Unearned favor and a second chance at happiness. Grace proved to be a content baby, sleeping well and eating heartily, though she had inherited her father's strong will and her mother's stubborn determination. As Grace grew, Olivia watched Kyle transform into a devoted father. He would spend hours with their daughter, talking to her as if she could understand every word, carrying her around the ranch and introducing her to the animals, singing off key lullabies that made Olivia's heart swell. You're wonderful with her, Olivia said one evening, watching him rock Grace to sleep. I never knew I could love something this much, Kyle admitted softly. Between you and her, my heart is so full it might burst. Life settled into a new rhythm that included middle-of-the-night feedings and the chaos that came with a baby. But neither Olivia nor Kyle would have changed a thing. The ranch continued to prosper, Kyle's careful management and Olivia's contributions allowing them to expand the herd and make improvements to the property. When Grace was 6 months old, Kyle's sister, Anna, arrived for a visit with her own children. The house filled with noise and laughter, and Olivia experienced for the first time what a real family gathering felt like. I was so worried when Kyle said he was advertising for a mail-order bride, Anna confided one afternoon while they watched the children play. After what Elizabeth did to him, I was afraid he'd choose poorly out of desperation. And what do you think now? Olivia asked, curious about her sister-in-law's assessment. Anna smiled warmly. I think he chose perfectly. You're exactly what he needed, Olivia. You've brought him back to life. I haven't seen him this happy since before our parents died. The validation meant more than Olivia expected. She had spent so much of her life being told she wasn't good enough that having someone explicitly state her value still felt foreign and wonderful. As Grace's first birthday approached, Olivia realized she was pregnant again. This time, the announcement was less dramatic but no less joyful. Already, Kyle laughed when she told him. Well, I suppose we're making up for lost time. Their son arrived in the spring of 1880, an easier birth than Grace's had been. They named him Matthew, and he was his sister's opposite in every way. Where she had been content, he was fussy. Where she had slept well, he woke frequently, but Kyle doted on both children equally. I can't believe this is my life, Olivia said one afternoon, watching Kyle play with both children in the yard while she snapped beans on the porch. 2 years ago, I was so lonely I thought I might die from it. Now look at all this. Martha, who had stopped by for a visit, nodded knowingly. That's the way love works sometimes. You think you'll never find it, and then it sneaks up on you when you least expect it. It wasn't just love, though, Olivia reflected. It was Kyle's determination to show me my worth. Every single day, he proves through his actions that I matter, that I'm valued. He spent 2 years undoing a lifetime of messages that I wasn't good enough. And you've done the same for him, Martha pointed out. Everyone in town can see the difference in Kyle since you arrived. He was becoming bitter and closed off after Elizabeth. You opened him back up. The years passed in a blur of hard work and simple joys. The ranch continued to grow, and Kyle eventually needed to hire additional help beyond Tom's seasonal work. They added a third child, another daughter they named Sarah, in 1882. The house expanded too, with Kyle building on additional rooms to accommodate their growing family. Olivia learned to ride well, managing her own horse and taking on more of the ranch work as the children grew older enough to manage themselves for short periods. She discovered she had a natural talent for handling cattle, and an even better one for managing the ranch's finances, her education serving her well as she took over the bookkeeping that Kyle had always struggled with. "You're better at this than I ever was," Kyle admitted one evening, looking over the carefully organized ledgers Olivia maintained. "We've made more profit this year than any previous year, and it's largely due to your management." "We make a good team," Olivia replied, leaning against his shoulder. "You understand the land and animals, I understand numbers and organization. Together we're formidable. Together we're unstoppable," Kyle corrected, pulling her into his lap. "I love you more every single day, Olivia Brennan." "Did I tell you that today?" "Only twice." She smiled, kissing him. "But I never get tired of hearing it." Their children grew healthy and strong, each developing distinct personalities. Grace was thoughtful and bookish, inheriting her mother's love of reading and her father's determination. Matthew was adventurous and fearless, always getting into mischief, but charming his way out of trouble with an easy smile. Sarah was the baby, sweet-natured and affectionate, who loved everyone and everything with equal enthusiasm. Olivia discovered that motherhood suited her in ways she had never anticipated. She was patient and creative, finding joy in teaching her children and watching them grow. Kyle often found her in the evenings, surrounded by children as she read aloud or helped with lessons, and the sight never failed to make him pause and offer thanks for the day he had decided to place that advertisement. "You ever regret it?" Olivia asked him one night after the children were finally asleep. They were lying in bed, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "Advertising for a bride instead of courting someone local? Never." His answer was immediate and firm. "If I had courted locally, I might have ended up with someone who wanted me for the wrong reasons. Instead, I got you. Someone who came here with no expectations and has exceeded every hope I didn't even know I had. You're my partner in every sense of the word, Olivia. I can't imagine anyone else beside me." "I used to think I wasn't worthy of love," she admitted softly. "My stepmother, the people back in Philadelphia, they all reinforced the idea that I was too plain, too serious, too much of everything wrong and not enough of anything right. They were idiots." Kyle shifted so he could look into her eyes. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see a woman who faced uncertainty with courage. I see a mother who loves her children fiercely and raises them with wisdom and kindness. I see a partner who has made my dreams possible and then expanded them beyond what I thought I could have. I see beautiful eyes that light up when you laugh, a smile that makes my day better just by appearing, and a spirit that refuses to give up even when things are hard. That's who you are, Olivia." "That's what I see." Tears streamed down her face, but they were happy tears, the kind that came from being truly seen and valued. "You've spent years proving my worth to me. Every day you show me through actions and words that I matter. Because you do matter. You matter to me, to our children, to this ranch, to this life we've built. And I'll spend the rest of my days making sure you never forget it." True to his word, Kyle never let a day pass without demonstrating his love. Even during the busiest seasons when work consumed most of their energy, he found ways to show his affection. A flower left on her pillow, an unexpected kiss while she worked in the kitchen, taking over the children's bedtime routine so she could have a moment to herself. all small gestures that added up to a lifetime of devotion. The ranch prospered beyond their initial hopes. By 1885, they had expanded to over 500 acres and maintained a herd of 400 cattle. They employed 3 full-time hands and additional seasonal help during busy periods. The house had grown to accommodate not just their family, but also occasional guests, and they had become known throughout the territory for their hospitality and fair dealings. Olivia had also become an integral part of the Evanston community. She helped organize the annual church fundraiser, taught Sunday school, and opened her home regularly for the ladies' sewing circle. The same women who had been curious about the mail-order bride had become genuine friends, and Olivia finally understood what it meant to belong somewhere. On their 7th anniversary, Kyle surprised her with a trip to Cheyenne, their first time away from the ranch and children since Matthew's birth. Anna agreed to watch the children, and Kyle had arranged for Tom to manage the ranch in their absence. "I can't believe you organized all this without me knowing," Olivia said as they boarded the train, feeling almost giddy with the unexpected adventure. "I'm not just a pretty face," Kyle teased. "I can plan surprises too." Cheyenne was a revelation, larger and more sophisticated than Evanston, with actual hotels and restaurants and even a theater. Kyle had booked them a room in the finest hotel in town, and that first evening he took her to dinner at a restaurant with white tablecloths and crystal glasses. "This must have cost a fortune," Olivia whispered, looking around at the elegant surroundings. "You're worth it." Kyle reached across the table to take her hand. "You've given me everything, Olivia. A home, a family, a partnership that makes every challenge easier. The least I can do is give you a few days of being treated like the queen you are." Over the next 3 days, Kyle lavished her with attention. They attended a play at the theater, shopped in stores that carried goods from back east, and spent long hours simply walking and talking without the constant demands of children and ranch work. In the evenings, they returned to their hotel room and rediscovered each other with the passion and leisure that had been missing from their hurried encounters at home. "I needed this," Olivia admitted on their last night, curled against Kyle's side. "I love our life, our children, the ranch, all of it. But I needed to remember that I'm not just a mother and a rancher. I'm also a woman and a wife." "You're my woman and my wife," Kyle corrected, kissing her thoroughly. "And I plan to make sure you never forget that part of yourself, even when we're back home and chaos resumes." The return to the ranch was joyful, with all 3 children launching themselves at their parents in a tangle of hugs and excited chatter about everything that had happened during their absence. Normal life resumed, but something had shifted. The trip had reminded both Olivia and Kyle to carve out time for themselves, to nurture their relationship even amid the demands of raising children and running a ranch. They made it a practice to spend at least one evening a week together after the children were asleep, sometimes talking, sometimes playing chess, sometimes simply sitting in comfortable silence. These evenings became sacred, a reminder that they were partners first and parents second. More children followed, 2 more sons born in 1886 and 1888, named Thomas and James respectively. The house seemed to constantly ring with laughter and noise, and Olivia thrived in the chaos. She had found her calling in motherhood and partnership, and the girl who had once questioned her worth had become a woman who knew exactly how valuable she was. 5 children, Kyle marveled one evening, looking around the dinner table at their brood. "We've built quite a legacy." "We've built a family," Olivia corrected. "A real family based on love and respect. That's better than any legacy." As the children grew older, they began to take on more responsibility around the ranch. Grace showed particular aptitude for working with the horses, while Matthew had his father's natural talent with cattle. Sarah was drawn to the domestic side, spending hours with Olivia learning to cook and sew, while the younger boys were still figuring out their interests. Kyle made sure to spend individual time with each child, recognizing that they all needed different things from him. He taught the older children to ride and rope, helped them with their lessons, and listened patiently to their dreams and fears. Watching him with their children, Olivia fell in love with him all over again, seeing in his patient fatherhood the same qualities that had first drawn her to him. The years were not without challenges. There were harsh winters that decimated part of the herd, dry summers that tested their water supplies, and the constant struggle to keep the ranch profitable in an increasingly competitive market. But through it all, Olivia and Kyle faced every obstacle as a team, their partnership only growing stronger with each challenge overcome. In 1890, when Grace turned 11, she asked her mother a question that had clearly been weighing on her mind. "Mama, is it true you were a mail-order bride?" Olivia looked up from the bread she was kneading, surprised by the question. "Yes, that's true. Who told you that?" "Some of the kids at school. They said you answered an advertisement and came here to marry Papa sight unseen. Is that really how you met?" Olivia wiped her hands on her apron and sat down, gesturing for Grace to join her. "It is. Your father advertised for a wife, and I answered because I had nowhere else to go. I came here not knowing anything about him except what he had written in 3 short letters." Grace's eyes were wide. "Weren't you scared?" "Terrified," Olivia admitted. "I didn't know if he would be kind or cruel, if I would be safe, if I had made a terrible mistake. But from the moment I met your father, he treated me with respect and kindness. He gave me time to get to know him, never pushed me into anything I wasn't ready for, and showed me through his actions that I was valued. Do you regret it, coming here that way?" "Not for a single moment." Olivia pulled her daughter close. "Answering that advertisement was the best decision I ever made. It brought me to your father, to this life, to you and your siblings. I went from being alone and unwanted to having more love than I ever imagined possible." "Some of the kids said mail-order brides are desperate and pathetic," Grace said quietly. Olivia felt a flash of anger on behalf of her younger self and all the other women who had made similar choices. Some people will always judge what they don't understand. "Yes, I was desperate when I came here, desperate to survive and find a place in the world. But there's nothing pathetic about being brave enough to start over, about being willing to take a risk for a chance at something better. Your father saw that courage and valued it. He didn't see a desperate woman, he saw a partner." "I think it's romantic," Grace declared. "Like something from one of your books, 2 people who found each other against all odds and built a wonderful life together." Olivia smiled, hugging her daughter tighter. "When you put it that way, I suppose it is rather romantic." That evening she told Kyle about the conversation. He listened quietly, then pulled her into his arms. "Our daughter is wise beyond her years. This is romantic, what we have. It's also real and solid and better than anything I could have imagined when I wrote that advertisement." "Do you remember what you wrote?" Olivia asked, curious. "Every word." Kyle's expression turned thoughtful. "Rancher seeking wife must be of good moral character, willing to work hard, no beauty required." Looking back, I wish I had written it differently. That last phrase must have hurt you. "It did," Olivia admitted. "But I understand now what you meant. You weren't saying you didn't value beauty. You were saying it wasn't your priority. I was trying to find someone with substance, someone who wouldn't be swayed by surface things. I found that in you, but I also found beauty that runs deeper than skin. You are beautiful, Olivia, in ways that matter and ways that last." I wish younger me had been articulate enough to say what I really meant, which was that I was looking for someone whose worth went beyond appearance. You've spent 12 years proving my worth to me, Olivia said softly. Every single day, through words and actions, you've shown me that I matter. You've undone years of damage from people who made me believe I was insufficient. You were never insufficient. They were just too blind to see what you had to offer. Kyle kissed her forehead. I'm grateful for their blindness, though, because it meant you were available when I came looking. As the 1890s progressed, the Brennan family became increasingly established in Wyoming territory. Their ranch was one of the most successful in the region, and their children were growing into capable young people who contributed meaningfully to the operation. Grace, now a teenager, had become an accomplished horsewoman who helped train the ranch's horses. Matthew, at 12, could work alongside the ranch hands with surprising competence. The younger children were equally involved according to their ages and abilities. Olivia had also expanded her role beyond the ranch. She had started a small school for the children in the area, holding classes in their enlarged home 3 days a week. Many of the neighboring families couldn't afford to send their children to the school in town, and Olivia's education made her well suited to teaching. Kyle supported the endeavor wholeheartedly, even building an addition to the house specifically designed as a classroom. You're changing lives, Kyle told her one evening as they reviewed her lesson plans together. These children wouldn't have access to education otherwise. I remember how important learning was to me, Olivia replied. It was the one thing my stepmother couldn't take away, the knowledge I had acquired. I want to give that gift to others. The school became another point of pride for the community, and Olivia's reputation as a teacher spread throughout the region. Families began sending their children from farther away, sometimes boarding them with neighbors during the school week. Olivia managed it all with characteristic efficiency, balancing her roles as teacher, mother, wife, and ranch partner with remarkable grace. In 1893, Wyoming achieved statehood, a momentous occasion that the entire family celebrated. They traveled to Cheyenne for the celebrations, a rare trip for the whole family, and Kyle made sure the children understood the historical significance of the moment. This is the place your mother and I have built our lives, he told them as they watched the festivities. Wyoming gave us the freedom to create something meaningful. Never take for granted the opportunities this state has provided. That same year, at 44 years old, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. A surprise given that James was already 5, and she had assumed her childbearing years were behind her. The pregnancy was harder than the previous ones, her body older and less resilient, but she carried the baby to term without major complications. Their final child, a daughter they named Ruth, was born in early 1894. She would be the baby of the family, arriving when Grace was 15 and already helping significantly with the household and ranch work. Ruth was doted on by her older siblings, who took turns caring for her and teaching her new things. 6 children, Olivia marveled, holding Ruth while watching her other children play in the yard. I went from believing I'd never have a family to having 6 children and a husband who adores me. Life is strange sometimes. Life is good, Kyle corrected, sitting beside her and wrapping an arm around both of them. Strange, yes, but also very, very good. As Ruth grew from infant to toddler, the older children began making plans for their own futures. Grace, now 17, had caught the attention of a young rancher from a neighboring property, a respectable young man named David Hayes, who Kyle approved of after thorough investigation. Matthew, at 15, was already talking about expanding the ranch someday, taking the operation his father had built and growing it even further. "It's hard watching them grow up," Olivia admitted one evening. "Part of me wants to keep them small forever." "They're growing into fine people," Kyle reassured her. "We've raised them well, you and I. They have strong values, good work ethics, and kind hearts. We should be proud." "I am proud. I'm also a bit melancholy. When Grace marries and moves to David's ranch, this house will feel emptier." "It's the natural way of things." Kyle pulled her close. "We raised them to be independent, to build their own lives. We can't hold on to them forever, much as we might want to." Grace's wedding in the summer of 1896 was a beautiful affair held at the ranch, with half the county in attendance. Olivia cried as she watched her firstborn daughter exchange vows with David, remembering the tiny infant she had held 17 years earlier. Kyle stood beside her, his own eyes suspiciously bright as he gave Grace away. "She'll be fine," he whispered to Olivia as they watched the young couple dance. "She's strong and smart, just like her mother. I know, I just miss her already. She's only moving 2 properties over. You'll see her all the time." Kyle turned her toward him, wiping away her tears. "Besides, we still have 5 more at home. You won't have time to be too lonely." He was right. The house still rang with noise and activity, especially with Ruth being an energetic toddler who kept everyone on their toes. Matthew took on more responsibility with the ranch, working alongside his father and learning every aspect of the operation. Sarah, now 14, had become Olivia's right hand with both the household and the school, showing a natural talent for teaching that suggested she might follow in her mother's footsteps. The younger boys, Thomas and James, were typical boys, full of energy and mischief but good-hearted underneath it all. They kept Olivia and Kyle young, or at least tried to, with their constant adventures and schemes. "They're going to give us gray hair," Olivia laughed one evening after rescuing Thomas from a tree he had climbed too high and couldn't get down from. Too late for that. Kyle ran his hand through his hair, which had indeed gone silver at the temples. "But I wouldn't trade a single moment, not even the terrifying ones." As the century drew to a close, Olivia and Kyle took stock of their lives with deep satisfaction. They had been married for over 20 years, raised 6 children, built a prosperous ranch, and created a legacy that would extend beyond their own lives. More importantly, they had built a partnership based on mutual respect, trust, and deep abiding love. "Do you remember what you said when you first arrived?" Kyle asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. It had become their favorite time of day, these quiet moments after supper when they could simply be together. "You said your life was essentially over, that you had no future worth imagining." "I remember feeling that way very clearly," Olivia replied, leaning against his shoulder. "I was so wrong, thankfully. I'm grateful every day that you were desperate enough to answer my advertisement." Kyle kissed the top of her head. "I'm grateful that you took that risk, that you trusted me enough to build this life together. I'm grateful you saw something valuable in me when I couldn't see it myself." Olivia turned to look up at him. "You spent years proving my worth to me, Kyle. Every single day you showed me through actions and words that I mattered. You took a woman who had been told her entire life that she wasn't good enough and convinced her that she was not just sufficient but exceptional. You are exceptional." Kyle's voice was fierce with conviction. "You always were. I just helped you see what was already there. You did more than that. You gave me a family, a purpose, a home, and a love I never dreamed was possible. You gave me everything. We gave each other everything." Kyle stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "That's what partnership means. We built this life together, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. My life would be empty without you in it." They stood there on the porch, holding each other as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Inside, their children were laughing over some shared joke, the sound drifting through the open windows. This was home, this was family, this was love in its truest form. In the years that followed, Grace gave them their first grandchild, a boy they named Kyle after his grandfather. The pride on Kyle's face when he held his namesake was something Olivia would treasure forever. Matthew eventually married as well, bringing home a sweet girl named Rebecca who fit seamlessly into the family. Sarah decided to pursue teaching, taking over Olivia's school entirely when Olivia's health began to decline slightly in her mid-50s. The younger children grew and found their own paths. Thomas showed an interest in veterinary medicine, a relatively new field that fascinated him. James proved to have a head for business and began handling more of the ranch's financial dealings and negotiations. Ruth, the baby, was still finding her way but showed signs of inheriting her mother's love of reading and her father's way with animals. Through it all, Olivia and Kyle remained each other's anchor. They weathered the loss of Tom Walsh, who passed away peacefully in his sleep at 73 after decades of loyal service to the ranch. They celebrated the births of multiple grandchildren, each one a new joy and a new reason to be grateful for the life they had built. They faced the challenges of aging bodies and the realization that they wouldn't live forever, but they faced it together as they had faced everything else. On their 30th anniversary in 1908, their children organized a celebration at the ranch with all their friends and neighbors in attendance. The house and yard were filled with people whose lives had been touched by Olivia and Kyle in various ways. From former students of Olivia's school to ranchers Kyle had helped during difficult times to the children and grandchildren who bore witness to a love that had endured through 3 decades of daily choice and commitment. "Look at all this," Olivia said to Kyle as they surveyed the crowd. "Look at what we've built." "Look at what you've built," Kyle corrected. "None of this would exist without you. You brought life and love and purpose to this ranch. You transformed a house into a home and a lonely man into the happiest person alive." "We transformed each other," Olivia insisted. "I was a woman who believed she had no worth, and you spent 30 years proving otherwise. You were a man who had been hurt and closed off, and I like to think I helped open your heart again. You did more than that. You filled my heart until it overflowed." Kyle took her hand, raising it to his lips. 30 years ago, a scared young woman stepped off a train in Evanston, and my life began in earnest. Every day since has been a gift I never take for granted. Their children raised toasts, friends shared stories, and the celebration went late into the evening. When everyone had finally departed and the house was quiet again, Olivia and Kyle climbed the stairs to their bedroom, moving more slowly than they once had but still together. "I'm tired," Olivia admitted, sitting on the edge of the bed they had shared for 3 decades. It was a big day. Kyle sat beside her, taking her hand. "But a good one, the best." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you, Kyle, for everything, for seeing value in me when I couldn't see it myself, for being patient and kind and loving, for building this life with me. For 30 years of proving every single day that I matter. You do matter." Kyle's voice was thick with emotion. "You matter more than anything in this world. You are the best decision I ever made, the greatest gift I ever received, and the love of my life. I would do it all again in a heartbeat, every challenge and struggle, just to end up here with you." They had started as strangers bound by necessity and desperation, but they had built something extraordinary through daily acts of love and commitment. the mail-order bride who had questioned her worth, had found a cowboy who spent his life proving it, not through grand gestures but through the steady accumulation of small kindnesses, honest words, and unwavering devotion. As they lay down to sleep that night, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been for thousands of nights before, both Olivia and Kyle reflected on the mysterious paths that had brought them together. A simple advertisement, a desperate answer, a chance taken on both sides had resulted in a love story that would be told and retold by their children and grandchildren for generations to come. The years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren, the joy of watching their children succeed in their own endeavors, and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. Olivia's health declined gradually, her body wearing out after years of hard work and multiple pregnancies, but her spirit remained strong. Kyle, despite his own aging, cared for her with the same devotion he had shown from the beginning, proving once again that his love was not contingent on circumstances, but was a choice he made every single day. On a spring morning in 1915, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Olivia passed away peacefully in her sleep with Kyle holding her hand. She was 60 years old and had lived a life far richer and more fulfilling than that scared 23-year-old on the train platform could have ever imagined. Her last words to Kyle were simple but profound. "Thank you for showing me what love really means. Thank you for proving my worth when I couldn't see it. Thank you for 37 years of choosing me every single day." Kyle mourned her deeply, but he also celebrated her life and their love. At the funeral, attended by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched, he stood and spoke about the woman who had transformed his existence. "Olivia came to me as a mail-order bride, a transaction on paper, but she became my partner, my love, my reason for being. She questioned her worth because the world had told her she had none. I spent my life proving otherwise because it was the truest thing I knew. She was worth everything, worth every moment, worth every effort. She made me better, made this ranch better, made everyone she touched better. I am the man I am because she loved me, and I will carry that love until my last breath." True to his word, Kyle carried that love for the remaining years of his life. He passed away in 1920, at the age of 70, having spent his final years ensuring that their legacy was preserved, and their children and grandchildren understood the power of committed love. He was buried beside Olivia on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, their headstones bearing simple inscriptions that told a profound story. Olivia Brennan, beloved wife and mother. She found her worth. Kyle Brennan, devoted husband and father. He spent his life proving it. Their children and grandchildren continued to work the ranch, maintaining the standards Olivia and Kyle had established and passing down the story of how a mail-order bride and a cowboy had found each other and built an extraordinary life together. The school Olivia had started continued under Sarah's direction, educating children for another generation. The values they had instilled of hard work, honesty, kindness, and the power of daily choosing love rippled outward through their descendants and the community they had served. The house itself remained in the family for decades, each generation adding their own touches, but preserving the core that Olivia and Kyle had created. Visitors could still see the bedroom where 6 children had been born, the kitchen where countless meals had been prepared, the porch where 2 people had sat countless evenings watching the sunset and counting their blessings. Years later, when Grace was an old woman herself, she would tell her own grandchildren about the grandmother they had never met and the grandfather who had loved her so completely. She would describe how Olivia had arrived in Wyoming with nothing but a battered traveling case and a heart full of doubt. How Kyle had seen past the surface to the treasure beneath. How two people who had started as strangers had built a love that lasted beyond death. True love, Grace would say, isn't about grand gestures or perfect romance. It's about seeing someone's worth when they can't see it themselves and proving it through actions every single day. It's about building a life together brick by brick, choice by choice, moment by moment. That's what your great-grandparents had, and that's what they passed down to all of us. The legacy of Olivia and Kyle Brennan extended far beyond their years on Earth. In the values they instilled, the family they created, the community they served, and the example they set, their love story continued to inspire and guide. They had proven that worth isn't determined by what the world says, but by how we treat each other. That love is a verb requiring daily action, and that two broken people can come together and create something whole and beautiful and enduring. The ranch in Evanston, Wyoming, stood as testament to their vision and partnership, a physical manifestation of what happens when someone questions their worth, and another person spends their life proving it. It was a love story written not in flowery words but in fence posts mended together, meals shared, children raised, hardships overcome, and thousands of small moments of choosing each other again and again. In the end, Olivia Norwood, who became Olivia Brennan, discovered that she had been wrong about so many things. She wasn't worthless or unlovable or destined for a life of lonely desperation. She was valuable beyond measure, worthy of devoted love, and destined for a life so rich and full that it would echo through generations. All it took was one man who saw what she couldn't see and dedicated his life to proving it, and one woman brave enough to accept that love and let it transform her. Their story, born from an advertisement and a desperate answer, became a love letter to the power of commitment, the importance of seeing and affirming each other's worth, and the extraordinary lives that can be built when two people choose each other every single day. It was a testament to the truth that our worth doesn't come from external validation, but from how we love and are loved, and that sometimes the most profound journeys begin with a single uncertain step onto a train platform in a dusty Wyoming town.